I wake up 15 minutes before my alarm clock rings, a habit I developed during 40 years of teaching school. I stare at the ceiling for a few seconds, gathering my thoughts. I'm 67, and I've been living in my daughter's house in Osprey Falls for 5 years. It's a small town in North Carolina where everyone knows each other, but no one seems to notice me. The first rays of sunlight filter through the loosely drawn curtains. My room is Nate's former study, which he had to give up when I moved in. He still can't forgive me for that, although he pretends everything is fine. 32 square feet is all the space I have in this 2-story house. Quietly, so as not to wake anyone, I get out of bed. My joints ache from yesterday's cleaning. I listen. The house is silent. Nate and Veronica will be up in an hour, and the kids can sleep for another hour and a half. That gives me just enough time to make breakfast for everyone. In the kitchen, I turn on the coffee maker as usual. Veronica loves freshly ground coffee, and Nate prefers English tea. For Haley, I make orange juice, and for Ash, warm milk with honey. I take out the eggs for the omelet, slice the tomatoes and cheese, and put the toaster on. I move silently, my movements honed over years. When I hear the shower running upstairs, I'm already setting the table. Veronica comes down first, wearing her nurse's robe, her hair damp and her phone in her hand. "Good morning," I say, setting a cup of coffee in front of her. "Yeah," she says, without looking up from her screen. "Mom, have you seen my blue folder? The one with the patient reports? It's on the nightstand in the hall. You left it there yesterday." She nods, still not looking at me, and takes a sip of coffee. I'm used to this. Being background, part of the furniture like the refrigerator or the kitchen table. Useful, but invisible. "Nika, remember that Haley has her recital today?" I remind her. "At 4 o'clock. Damn, I completely forgot." She finally looks up. "I have to work until 5. "I'll take her, don't worry." "You'd better." Veronica sighs, returning to her phone. Nate comes downstairs, already dressed in his suit, his hair wet from the shower. He sits down at the table and picks up the newspaper I left next to his cutlery. "Your omelet will get cold," I say, placing the plate in front of him. "Thanks, Marjorie," he replies without much enthusiasm and puts the newspaper aside. I hear the sound of children's feet running. Haley and Ash are racing down the stairs, even though I've asked them 100 times not to run. The stairs are steep. "Grandma!" Ash rushes over to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "I had a dream about dinosaurs." "Tell me about it at breakfast," I smile, stroking his head. Unlike her brother, Haley is already too old for such displays of affection. She sits down at the table and reaches for her toast. "Haley, hands," I remind her. She rolls her eyes but gets up and goes to the sink. At 10 years old, she's starting to copy her mother more and more. The same gestures, the same way of speaking. Sometimes it's scary. The kids do most of the talking at breakfast. Ash rambles on about the T-Rexes in his dream. Haley complains that Maddie from her class got a new phone. Veronica and Nate exchange brief comments about their plans for the day, occasionally responding to the children. It's as if I'm not at the table. "Mom, are you picking up the kids from school today?" Veronica asks, getting up from the table. "I work until 5, and then the girls and I are going to the Blue Oyster." "Sure," I nod, "and I'll take Ash to Haley's recital." "Great," she kisses the children on the tops of their heads. "Be good at school." Nate also gets up, finishing his tea. "Don't forget my shirts," he calls to me. "I need the blue one for tomorrow." "I'll iron them," I reply automatically. 20 minutes later, the house is empty. Nate takes Veronica to the hospital, then drives to his construction company. The school bus picks up the kids. I am left alone in the big, quiet house. My daily routine begins. First, I clear the table and wash the dishes. Then I go upstairs and make the beds. Veronica doesn't have time for such trifles, and Nate considers it women's work. I gather scattered toys and clothes in my grandchildren's room. Ash is messy, like many boys his age, and Haley already has her own mess. Cosmetics, hair clips, notebooks with secrets. I go down to the basement where the washing machine is. I sort the laundry and start the first load. While the machine is running, I go back to the kitchen and prepare cookie dough. Ash loves to come home from school and find warm chocolate chip cookies on the table. At 12:30, I turn off the oven and go to my neighbor's house. Trudy Parker is the only person in this town besides my family with whom I regularly socialize. She is 65, a widow like me, but she has no children. Maybe that's why she doesn't see me as a free servant. "Marjorie!" she exclaims as she opens the door. "Come in, I've just made tea." We sit on her tiny porch. Trudy tells me the latest town gossip, and I listen, nodding occasionally. Most of the people she talks about I know only by name. "Listen, Marge, why don't you come with us to the board game club on Friday?" she suddenly suggests. "It's a bunch of old ladies like us. We play bridge, chat, sometimes even open a bottle of champagne." I mentally review my family's schedule. Nate has poker with his friends on Friday night, which means Veronica will be home alone with the kids. "I can't, Trudy. I have to babysit my grandchildren." "For God's sake, Marge, your daughter is 42 years old. She can spend one Friday with her children." "She's tired from work." Trudy shakes her head. "You spoil them too much. They take advantage of you." I look away. Maybe she's right, but what can I do? After Warren died, I have no one left but Veronica and my grandchildren. The money from the sale of our house went almost entirely toward the down payment on their new house, the one where I now live in Nate's former study. I have nowhere else to go. "It's not so bad," I say finally. "They're good people, just busy." Trudy snorts but doesn't argue. We finish our tea, and I head home to get changed and pick up the kids from school. The bus arrives at exactly 3:15. Haley gets off first, focused and a little nervous about her performance today. Ash jumps out after her, waving a drawing. "Grandma, look!" He hands me the piece of paper. "I drew our family." The drawing shows 5 figures holding hands: Mom, Dad, Haley, Ash, and me. My heart melts with tenderness. "That's beautiful, sweetie," I say, hugging him. "Let's hurry up. We have to get ready for Haley's performance." At home, I help my granddaughter put on her leotard and braid her hair in a complicated style, just as she asks. Ash manages to eat 3 cookies and drink a glass of milk. The school gym is full of parents. Ash and I sit in the 3rd row. He fidgets in his seat, bored, but I pull a book about dinosaurs out of my bag and he quietens down. Haley is the 4th performer. She is graceful and diligent, although I can see that she is a little nervous. After her performance, I film it on my phone. Veronica asked me to record it. We get home at the beginning of the 6th period. I make dinner, check Ash's homework, and iron Nate's shirt. Veronica comes home at 8, tired after her shift, but excited about seeing her friends later. "How was the performance?" She asks, getting changed. "Haley was beautiful," I say, handing her the phone with the recording. She was a little nervous on the final element, but she pulled it off. "Wonderful," Veronica replies absently, watching the video. "Have the kids had dinner?" "Yes, they're upstairs. Ash is already in his pajamas and Haley is reading." "Great," she says, handing me back the phone. "Don't wait up for me. I'll be late. The girls will be over in 15 minutes. "Is Nate staying late too?" "Yeah, he has some kind of meeting." That means he's going to the bar with his colleagues, but I don't comment. None of my business. Without asking any more questions, I go upstairs to say goodnight to my granddaughters. Veronica meets her friends at the door. Beverly and Tammy are nurses from her ward, both 5 years younger than her. They greet each other loudly, exchange compliments, and laugh. I go downstairs to say hello politely. "Hello, girls," I say as I step into the hallway. "Hello, Mrs. Ellington," replies Tammy, the most polite of the 3. "Don't mind us," adds Veronica. "Mom will watch the kids while we're out." They leave, leaving behind a trail of perfume and laughter. I return to the kitchen. My grandchildren are already in bed, and the house is quiet again. I make myself some tea and sit down in the armchair by the window, the only piece of furniture I brought from my home. Warren loved to sit there reading the newspaper before going to bed. Around 11, I hear the sound of a car pulling up. Veronica and her friends' voices sound louder than usual. Apparently, they didn't just have coffee at the Blue Oyster. I don't go out. I don't want to disturb their fun. But they don't leave. They come into the house. "God, I'm so tired of these shifts," says Veronica, and they walk into the living room, not noticing me in the dark kitchen. "Sit down, girls. Would you like some wine? I have a bottle left over from last time." They settle down on the sofa. Veronica brings wine and glasses. I sit quietly, not wanting to embarrass them with my presence, but it's too late to leave unnoticed. I'll have to walk past them to get to the stairs. "How do you manage all this?" Beverly asks after the first glass. "Work, kids, the house, I'd go crazy." Veronica sighs. It's hard, of course, especially when Nate is late. But thank God my mom helps with the kids. You're lucky she lives with you, Tammy remarks. Veronica lets out a short laugh. Well, it depends how you look at it. Yes, she picks up the kids and cooks dinner, but... She lowers her voice, but I can still hear every word. My mom lives with us. She doesn't know what privacy is. The girls laugh. Can you imagine? Nate and I don't have a minute alone together. She's always around, in the kitchen, in the living room with the kids. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating. But she helps with the housework, Tammy objects. Of course, and I'm grateful, really. But do you know what it's like to feel someone's presence all the time? No freedom. Nate says our house has turned into a nursing home. They laugh again, and I sit there, frozen, unable to move. So that's how they see me. A burden, an intrusion into their personal lives. And after everything I've done, after giving them the money from the sale of the house where Warren and I lived for 30 years, why not find her a place of her own? Suggests Beverly. A small apartment nearby? On her pension? Hardly, snorts Veronica. Besides, who would look after the children? We can't afford a nanny, so it's all about a free nanny and a housekeeper. I feel a lump rising in my throat. I carefully get up and tiptoe to the back door through the laundry room. I go around the house and enter through the front door, closing it loudly behind me. Nika, I'm home, I say in a deliberately cheerful voice as I enter the living room. 3 faces turn toward me. For a second, something like guilt flashes in Veronica's eyes, but she quickly regains her composure. Mom, you're not asleep yet? Meet Beverly and Tammy, my colleagues. We've already been introduced, I smile. Sorry to interrupt, I'll just take my pills and go to my room. Don't be silly, Mrs. Ellington, Beverly says with false warmth. Join us. Thank you, but I'm tired. Veronica, the kids are asleep. Ash asked me to wake him up if you're back before midnight. Don't wake him, it's late, she waves me off. Good night, Mom. I go up to my room, but I can't sleep. My daughter's words are spinning around in my head. My mom lives with us. She doesn't know what a personal life is. What about my personal life? Do I even have one? It's 1 o'clock in the morning when Veronica's friends finally leave. Half an hour later, Nate returns, judging by his footsteps, not entirely sober. He and Veronica talk quietly downstairs, then go up to their room. I lie awake, staring at the ceiling. At 3 o'clock, I get up and go down to the laundry room. I load the washing machine with the children's clothes and set it to the delicate cycle. Then I take out the iron and ironing board. Nate's blue shirt takes a particularly long time, the collar, cuffs, and pleats on the back. I iron slowly and carefully, as I did for Warren for all 36 years of our marriage. Then I hang up the laundry, tidy up Ash's toys scattered around the living room, and dust the photographs on the mantelpiece. One of them is of Veronica on her graduation day. I'm standing next to her, proud and happy. Warren is hugging us both. We were still living in our old house in Greenville then, and the future seemed so bright. Now, standing in the middle of a quiet house at 3 in the morning, I allow myself to think for the first time in a long time. What if Trudy is right? What if they really are using me? And what am I supposed to do about it? My mom lives with us. She doesn't know what a private life is. Echoes in my ears. And every night, I iron their clothes and put away my grandchildren's toys while they sleep. The bitter irony of the situation suddenly seems deafening. A week passed after that evening with Veronica's friends. I continued my usual routine as if nothing had happened. I got up before everyone else, made breakfast, got the kids ready for school, cleaned, did the laundry, made lunch and dinner. Nothing had changed except one thing. Now I knew exactly what my own daughter thought of me. Maybe I should have talked to her, expressed my feelings. But in 67 years of life, I had grown accustomed to keeping my emotions to myself. Warren often said that was my biggest flaw. I swallowed my hurt instead of spitting it out. One day you'll choke on it, Marge, he joked. Maybe that day had come. On Wednesday, as I was washing the dishes after breakfast, Veronica announced the news. Mom, we're having dinner on Saturday. My colleagues and their spouses are coming. About 10 people. I slowly dried my hands with a towel. Okay, what would you like to make? I was thinking about steaks with your special sauce. Remember, you made it for Nate's birthday? Everyone loved it. And baked potatoes? I asked. Yes, and your apple pie for dessert. Veronica smiled. I want to show off a little in front of my colleagues. Not me, but my cooking, I thought, but nodded. Sure, I'll make everything. Thanks, Mom. She kissed me on the cheek and ran off to work. I spent all Thursday making a shopping list and recipes. For 10 people, I needed a lot of things: meat, vegetables, spices, ingredients for the pie. On Friday, Trudy and I drove to a supermarket on the outskirts of town where prices were lower than at the local shops. You're planning a feast, she remarked, looking at my shopping cart. All by yourself? Veronica's at work, I shrugged. Besides, it's not that hard. Trudy shook her head. Don't you think she's asking too much of you? She's not asking, I protested. I want to help. Exactly, Trudy exclaimed, attracting the attention of other shoppers. You always want to help. Are you sure they appreciate it? I said nothing, sorting through the tomatoes. After overhearing my daughter's conversation with her friends, I wasn't so sure anymore. On Saturday, I got up at 5 in the morning. I had to marinate the meat, make the pie dough, and clean and chop the vegetables. The day flew by as I rushed between the stove and the oven, the sink and the refrigerator. By 4 o'clock, the table was set, the appetizers were ready, the meat was marinating, and the dough was rising. I even managed to vacuum the living room and arrange the candles. Veronica came home from work at 5. Glancing around the kitchen, she whistled. Wow, Mom, you've outdone yourself. Everything looks amazing. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. Maybe Trudy was wrong. Maybe my daughter did appreciate my efforts after all. Nate arrived half an hour later, laden with bags of alcohol. The children followed him, having been dropped off by Haley's classmate's mother. Grandma, it smells delicious, Ash exclaimed, hugging me. Is that apple pie? Later, sweetie, I said, stroking his head. Now go upstairs and get changed for dinner. The kids aren't having dinner with us, Veronica interjected. I ordered pizza for them. They'll eat in their room. I looked at her in surprise. But I cooked for everyone. Mom, it's a grown-up evening, Veronica cut in. Besides, the table can barely seat 10 people. All right, I turned to my grandchildren. Then I'll bring your pizza upstairs when it arrives. No, I'll take it myself, said Veronica. You'd better finish dinner. The guests will be here in an hour. The guests began to arrive around 7. Beverly and Tammy were the first to arrive with their husbands. When they saw me in the kitchen, they greeted me politely but didn't engage in conversation. Then an older couple arrived, Dr. Holland and his wife, Veronica's boss. The last to arrive were James and Lisa, a young couple from the hospital administration. Veronica introduced me to everyone, but it was obvious that I wasn't part of this group. No one asked me any questions or spoke to me directly. I was just the hostess, cook, and waitress all rolled into one. When everyone settled down in the living room with an aperitif, I went back to the kitchen to cook the steaks. Through the glass door, I could see them laughing and discussing work and mutual acquaintances. Veronica was beaming. She always loved being the center of attention. The pizza for the kids arrived. I wanted to take it upstairs, but Veronica grabbed the boxes. I'll do it, Mom, she said, climbing the stairs. 10 minutes later, with the steaks sizzling in the pan, Veronica returned to the kitchen. How are the kids? I asked, turning the meat over. Fine, watching cartoons, she said, glancing at the stove. Wow, almost ready? Yes, you can serve the appetizers. Great, she said, picking up the plates of canapes. I'll set the table. I started working on the steak sauce, the one Nate had raved about. I melted the butter, added the chopped mushrooms, onions, and spices. The smell was mind-blowing. The table was almost set when Veronica came back into the kitchen. She looked a little tense. Mom, could you... She hesitated. Could you eat dinner in your room tonight? There's not much room at the table, and we'll mostly be talking about work. You'll be bored. I froze with the ladle in my hand. Veronica had just asked me not to sit at the table I had set after a whole day of cooking? But I thought, I began. Mom, please. Her voice became irritated. This is an important evening for me. Dr. Holland may promote me to head nurse. I don't want anything to go wrong. And I might ruin it? I wanted to ask, but kept quiet. Of course, Nika, I said quietly. I'll eat in my room. She breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks. I'll bring you a plate with all the good stuff, I promise. I nodded, feeling a cold lump growing inside me. My own daughter was so ashamed of me that she didn't want to see me at the same table with her colleagues. I spent the rest of the evening like a ghost, moving silently between the kitchen and the dining room, serving new dishes and clearing empty plates. No one except Dr. Holland even thanked me for dinner. Everyone raved about Veronica's culinary talents, and she accepted the compliments with a smile, as if she had spent the whole day in the kitchen. The apple pie was a resounding success. Beverly even asked for the recipe, and Veronica promised to write it down and pass it on. She didn't mention that the recipe belonged to her mother. When dessert was over, I started clearing the table. No one offered to help. Veronica led the guests back to the living room, where Nate was already pouring cognac. After washing the mountain of dishes, I checked on the children. They were already asleep, wrapped in blankets like cocoons. Pizza boxes and candy wrappers were scattered on the floor. I quietly gathered the trash and left, carefully closing the door behind me. In my room, I changed into my nightgown and got into bed with a book. I could hear bursts of laughter and the clinking of glasses from downstairs. I tried to read, but the lines blurred before my eyes. My head was buzzing with fatigue and resentment. At 11, the guests began to leave. I heard Veronica and Nate saying goodbye to everyone at the door, promising to do it again soon. Then the last car door slammed, and the house fell silent. I was almost asleep when I heard their footsteps on the stairs. They stopped on the landing right outside my door. "What a great evening," said Nate. "You were the star, honey." "Do you think Holland liked it?" "He stuffed himself on your pie. Of course he liked it." They laughed quietly. Then Nate said something I couldn't hear, and Veronica replied, "Yes, it was a little awkward. But what could I do? I couldn't tell them my mother made it all." "Why not?" Nate's voice sounded puzzled. "Are you kidding? They'd think I couldn't handle anything." "Work, kids, the house. This way everyone thinks I'm Superwoman." "Oh, I see," Nate grunted. "Okay then." They were standing so close to my door that I was afraid to breathe. Why don't they go back to their place? "Speaking of your mom," Nate said suddenly, "I found out something." "What exactly?" Veronica's voice sounded wary. "Remember Mrs. Jenkins from accounting? Her mother lives in Sunny Hills." "That's the nursing home outside of town?" "Yes. Well, she says it's a great place. Private rooms, nursing staff, activities for the elderly, and the prices are quite reasonable." There was a pause. I held my breath. "Are you suggesting we send my mother there?" Veronica finally asked. "Why not?" Nate's voice grew quieter, and I had to strain to hear him. "Think about it, Nika. Your mother is 67. She's still quite independent. She'll be among people her own age, make friends, find activities she enjoys. And we can be a normal family again." "What do you mean, normal?" "Well, you know, without your mother constantly around, without having to whisper about our plans, without having to worry about her feelings and opinions, just us and the kids." "But who will pick up the kids from school, cook dinner, do the laundry?" Veronica's voice sounded doubtful, but not indignant. She was really considering the idea. "We'll hire a part-time helper," Nate said easily. "It'll be cheaper than supporting your mother." "Supporting her?" Veronica asked. "But she gave us the money from selling her house." "Which we put into renovating and expanding this house," Nate reminded her. "Besides, that was 5 years ago. We've been feeding and clothing her ever since." She felt nausea rising in her throat. They were talking about her as if she were a pet they had grown tired of. "I don't know, Nate," Veronica said. "Mom won't agree. She'll be hurt." "Why?" "We'll present it as caring for her. We'll say we're worried about her socializing, that she's bored sitting with the kids." "But that's not true." "It's partly true," Nate insisted. "She's 67, and she lives the life of an 80-year-old woman. No friends except that Trudy, no hobbies except cooking and cleaning. In a nursing home, she'll have a chance at a new life." There was a long pause. I lay there, clutching the blanket, feeling tears running down my cheeks. "Okay, I'll think about it," Veronica finally said. "But not now. After my promotion, okay? I need to focus on work." "Of course, honey." Nate's voice softened. "Whenever you want. I just found out that this option exists." They finally went to their bedroom, and I lay there in the dark, stunned by what I had heard. A nursing home. That's what they had planned for me. Get rid of the annoying old woman, free up the room, become a normal family again. What about me? What would become of my life? Sitting in a government-issued room, playing bingo with other abandoned old people, waiting for rare visits from my daughter and grandchildren. This was the end, not the new life Nate had talked about. I got out of bed and went to the window. The night was clear and starry. Somewhere out there, among those stars, was Warren. What would he have said if he had heard that conversation? He would have been furious. Warren always protected me, even from Veronica when she was a teenager and took her anger out on me. "You're too kind to her, Marge," he would say. "One day she'll walk all over you." He was right. I let my daughter walk all over me, and now she wants to get rid of me. No, that's not right. It's Nate who wants to get rid of me. Veronica is having second thoughts. So maybe all is not lost? Maybe I should talk to her, explain how I feel. But what would I say? "I know you want to send me to a nursing home? I heard you complaining to your friends about me?" Any conversation would only lead to awkwardness and promises that wouldn't be kept. Nothing would change. I went back to bed and lay awake until dawn, going over my options. Move in with my sister in Arizona? But we hadn't spoken in 10 years, and she had her own family. Rent an apartment? On my pension, I could only find a room in the most run-down neighborhood. Ask Trudy? But her house is even smaller than my room here. There seemed to be no way out. I was trapped. Either submit to Nate's plans or stay here as a free housekeeper, tolerated out of pity. When the first rays of sunlight illuminated the room, I realized that I couldn't live like this anymore. Something broke inside me after that conversation. I no longer wanted to be invisible, a ghost in my own daughter's house. I didn't deserve to be treated like this. Getting out of bed, I began to methodically gather the things I could carry in one bag. Documents, photographs, a few favorite books, the most necessary clothes. Everything else would have to be left behind. The plan came together on its own, without any conscious effort on my part. I would leave. Right now, while everyone was asleep. I would leave a note and disappear from their lives. Let them feel what it's like when there's no one to pick up the children from school, cook dinner, or iron their shirts. Let them understand that I'm not a piece of furniture or free labor, but a person with feelings and dignity. Maybe it's cowardly to leave without saying goodbye. Maybe it will hurt my grandchildren, especially Ash, who is so attached to me. But if I stay even one more day, my resolve will leave me, and I will suffer again, smile, and pretend that everything is fine. I put my bag by the door and sat down at the table. I took a sheet of paper and a pen. What should I write? "I'm sorry, I won't bother you anymore. Don't look for me, I'll be fine. I heard you talking about a nursing home." In the end, I wrote only one sentence. "I've decided to give you back your private life." I placed the note on the kitchen table where Veronica would be sure to find it. The sun was just rising when I quietly closed the front door behind me and walked down the deserted street. It was about 2 miles to the bus station. I walked slowly, carrying a heavy bag over my shoulder, and with every step I felt a weight lifting from my soul. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do next, but for the first time in 5 years, I felt truly alive. The Ospreys Falls bus station greeted me with the silence and coolness of the early morning. The benches were empty, the kiosks were locked, and only a cleaning lady was monotonously mopping the floor. The clock on the wall showed 6 in the morning. I was the only passenger in the waiting room. The ticket clerk, an elderly woman with dyed red hair, raised her eyebrows in surprise when I approached the window. "Where are you going so early, dear?" she asked, looking at me over her glasses. "To Cedar Hill," I replied, taking out my wallet. "When's the next bus?" "At 6:30, she said, glancing at her watch. "You'll make it. One-way ticket?" I hesitated for a moment. One way, it sounded so final. Yes, one way. After buying the ticket, I sat down on a bench by the window. My thoughts were jumbled. Despite my determination, I still didn't fully realize what I was doing. 67 isn't the best age to run away from home, but I had no choice. I couldn't stay where I was considered a burden. Just yesterday, I had a clear daily routine, a roof over my head, and a family. And today, I am a homeless, elderly woman with a single bag of belongings and very modest savings. Fortunately, I managed to withdraw money from my account 2 days ago when I went to pay the bills. $1,200. That's all I managed to save in 5 years living with my daughter. It's not much, but it should be enough to get me started. Most of my pension went to Veronica's family: food, clothes for the children, household cleaning products. I never considered it a problem because I was living in their house. Now that money had to support me on my own. Why did I choose Cedar Hill? It was the closest town large enough to get lost in, but not so big as to scare me, a country girl. Plus, I didn't know anyone there and no one knew me. It was the perfect place to start over. The bus arrived at exactly 6:30. I took a seat by the window in the middle of the bus. Besides me, there were only 4 other passengers: 2 men in work clothes, apparently returning from the night shift, a young woman with a child, and a priest with a worn prayer book. When the bus pulled away, I didn't turn to look at the city I was leaving behind. The future was unknown, but for some reason that scared me less than the prospect of returning. At that moment, Veronica was probably still asleep. She usually got up at 7 to get ready for work by 8:30. Nate woke up at 6:45. The children got up at the last minute after being called to breakfast several times. I wonder who would be the first to notice my note. Veronica, coming down to the kitchen for coffee? Or Nate, not finding his usual morning tea? Or maybe Ash, who was used to his grandmother greeting him with warm toast. These thoughts made my heart ache. I imagined their confusion, which would turn to anxiety, and then, what? Relief? Irritation? Would they miss me, or just the comforts I provided? "First time in Cedar Hill, ma'am?" the driver asked me suddenly, catching my eye in the rear-view mirror. "Yes," I replied. "Never been there before." "It's a nice town," he nodded. "Quiet. A lot of retirees have been moving there in recent years. It's cheaper than the big cities and the air is cleaner." I smiled gratefully. So I wouldn't stand out. Just another elderly woman who had decided to spend her remaining days in a quiet place. I stared out the window the whole way, watching the fields, forests, and small farms rush by. North Carolina had always seemed like a beautiful place to me, but now I saw it in a new light, not as a backdrop for someone else's life, but as a place of opportunity for my own. What if I couldn't make it? What if my money only lasted a month or 2 and I had to return, humiliated and defeated? The thought made me clench my fists. No, I would make it. I had worked as a school teacher for 40 years, raised a daughter, and survived the death of my husband. I was stronger than I appeared, even to myself. Meanwhile, the usual morning madness was beginning at Veronica's house. Veronica woke up to the ringing of her alarm clock and reached for her phone. 7 in the morning. Nate was already up. His side of the bed was empty. She could hear the shower running in the bathroom. I wonder if Mom made breakfast, she thought as she swung her legs out of bed. After yesterday's conversation with Nate, she felt a little uneasy. A nursing home? It sounded so final. She imagined visiting her mother in a government building with plastic flowers and the smell of medicine. Something inside her resisted that image. But on the other hand, didn't her mother deserve her own life, her own space, friends, entertainment? She had been living with Veronica's family for 5 years, and it didn't seem quite right. I'll have to talk to her, Veronica decided, putting on her robe. Maybe she should suggest other options to her mother, rent an apartment nearby, for example. Then she could still help with the children, but have her own space. Going down to the kitchen, Veronica immediately realized that something was wrong. It was quiet, too quiet. Usually her mother was already clattering with dishes, preparing breakfast. The smell of coffee and toast filled the house. But now the kitchen was empty and dark. "Mom?" Veronica called, turning on the light. No one answered. The usual breakfast setting was not on the table. The coffee maker was off. Maybe she's sick? Veronica thought anxiously as she headed for her mother's room. She knocked. Silence. She opened the door. The bed was neatly made. The book her mother usually read before bed was not on the bedside table. Veronica went to the wardrobe and opened it. Half of the hangers were empty. The drawers of the dresser were pulled out and some things were missing. "Nate!" she shouted, running out of the room. "Nate, Mom's gone!" Nate came out of the bathroom, drying his hair with a towel. "What do you mean, gone?" he asked. "Maybe she went to the store? At 7 in the morning? And took half her clothes with her?" They went down to the kitchen together. Nate opened the refrigerator as if expecting to find his mother-in-law there. Veronica rushed around the room, looking in every corner. "Here," she said suddenly, stopping at the table. "A note." There was indeed a piece of paper on the table. Veronica picked it up and read it aloud. "I've decided to give you your privacy back." They looked at each other. Veronica's eyes were filled with horror. "She heard everything," she whispered. "She heard us talking about the nursing home." "No way." Nate shook his head. "We were talking very quietly." "But what else could it mean?" "Give you back your privacy" is a direct quote from my conversation with my friends. Nate rubbed his face with his hands. "Damn it, where could she have gone?" "I don't know." Veronica sank into a chair. To her sister in Arizona? But they haven't spoken in years. To Trudy? But she lives in a tiny house. "Check her phone," Nate suggested. "Maybe she called someone." Veronica rushed to the table in the hall where her mother's old push-button phone usually lay, but it wasn't there. "She took it with her," she concluded. "Smart." At that moment, a child's voice came from upstairs. "Mom? Dad? Why are you yelling?" Ash stood on the stairs, sleepy and alarmed in his dinosaur pajamas. "It's okay, sweetie," Veronica said quickly. "Just, Grandma went to visit a friend." "Unexpectedly?" The boy frowned. "Grandma doesn't have any friends except Mrs. Parker." Veronica glanced helplessly at her husband. "An old friend," Nate interjected, "from another city. She called last night and needed help." "When will Grandma be back?" Ash asked. "Soon," Veronica lied. "Now go upstairs and wake your sister. You have to get to school." When Ash left, Veronica turned to her husband. "What should we do?" "First, calm down," Nate said. "She's a grown woman. She has the right to leave if she wants to." "But she didn't explain anything. She just disappeared. What if something happens to her?" "Judging by the empty closet, she planned this. That means she has a plan for where to go." Veronica shook her head. "But where? She doesn't have money for a hotel or an apartment." "She could have taken it out of her account," Nate shrugged. "Check when she last went to the bank." Veronica rummaged through the pile of receipts on the table. "Here, the day before yesterday. She paid the electricity and water bills." "There's your answer," Nate nodded. "She took money out of her account, too." "But there's not much there." Veronica bit her lip. $1,200, maybe a little more. What will she live on?" "Her pension," Nate reminded her. "She didn't give us all her pension, she just helped us with expenses." Veronica suddenly realized that she had no idea about her mother's financial situation. How much did she have in her account? What was her pension? Where did the money go? They had never discussed it. "We need to find her," she said resolutely. "I'll call Trudy." Meanwhile, my bus was approaching Cedar Hill. The driver announced the stop, and I began to gather my things. A strange feeling came over me, a mixture of fear of the unknown and unexpected relief. I was free. For the first time in many years, I could decide for myself what to do, where to go, how to live. No obligations to Veronica and her family, no expectations to live up to. Just me and my life, which I had yet to rebuild. Cedar Hill was exactly as I had imagined it, a small town with a main street lined with shops, cafes, and a library. People went about their business unhurriedly, no one paying any attention to an elderly woman with a bag. The first thing I had to do was find a place to stay. I asked the driver where I could find inexpensive lodging, and he recommended the Pine Grove Motel on the outskirts of town. "Clean and cheap," he said. That was enough for me. The motel was indeed clean, albeit very simple. It was a one-story building with a dozen rooms and a small reception desk, behind which sat a heavy-set middle-aged woman. "How many days?" she asked when I asked for a room. "I don't know yet," I replied honestly. "Maybe a week. I'm looking for a permanent place to live." She nodded understandingly. "Many people start out that way. There's a nice apartment for rent on Maple Street if you're interested. My brother-in-law is a real estate agent. I can give you his number." I thanked her and took her business card. The room was small but cozy. A bed, a nightstand, a TV, and a tiny bathroom. everything I needed for a temporary shelter. After settling in, I sat down on the edge of the bed and took out my phone. The screen showed 3 missed calls from Veronica. I had turned off the sound on the bus, not wanting to hear her voice, not now, when the wound was still so fresh. At that moment, my phone vibrated again. Veronica again. I dismissed the call and turned off my phone completely. I needed time to collect my thoughts and decide what to do next. Talking to my daughter now would only complicate things. Spreading the city map I had picked up at the reception desk on the bed, I began to plan my next steps. First, I needed to find an apartment I could rent on my pension. Then a job, not for the money, but to occupy my time and meet people. And only then, once I was settled, could I think about contacting Veronica. It was hard, but I didn't regret my decision. Better to be alone than feel like a burden on my own family. Meanwhile, panic reigned in Veronica's house. The children had already left for school, unaware of the real reason for their grandmother's absence. Veronica called everyone she could, Trudy, old neighbors from Greenville, even her aunt in Arizona. No one had seen or heard from Marjorie. "Maybe we should call the police," she suggested to her husband, who was getting ready for work. "What are you going to tell them?" Nate snorted. "That your mother, in her right mind and in full possession of her faculties, left home and left a note? They'll just laugh." "But she's 67. She could get lost, get into trouble." "She was a teacher for 40 years, Nick. Your mother isn't a helpless child. Give her time to cool off and she'll come back." "What if she doesn't?" Veronica asked quietly. "What if she doesn't want to live with us anymore?" Nate shrugged. "Then we'll hire a nanny for the kids and a housekeeper, just like we planned." There wasn't a hint of regret in his voice, and it terrified Veronica. Did he really not care? "This is my mother, Nate!" she exclaimed. "Not a broken washing machine that can be replaced." "I know," he sighed. "I'm sorry. I just don't think we should panic before we know what's going on. Give her a day or two. She'll show up." But Veronica couldn't wait. As soon as her husband left, she rushed over to her neighbor's house. Trudy met her at the door, looking as if she had been expecting her. "I knew you'd come," she said, letting Veronica in. "Marge is gone, isn't she?" "You knew?" Veronica gasped. "Did she tell you?" "No," Trudy shook her head. "But I saw her walking to the bus stop this morning with her bag. She looked determined." "And you didn't stop her? You didn't ask her where she was going?" Trudy shrugged. "Why should I? Your mother's a grown woman. If she decided to leave, she had her reasons." Veronica sank down onto the sofa, covering her face with her hands. She heard Nate and me talking about how we were thinking of putting her in a nursing home. "What?" Trudy stood up in indignation. "You wanted to put Marge in a nursing home after everything she's done for you?" "It was Nate's idea," Veronica muttered. "I haven't decided yet." "But you didn't reject it." Trudy cut her off. "No wonder she left. I would have left too, if I were her." "But where could she go?" Veronica's voice sounded desperate. "She has no money, no friends." Trudy softened. "She's stronger than you think, Nick. And smarter. If she decided to leave, she had a plan." "What kind of plan could an old woman with $1,000 in her pocket have?" "I don't know," Trudy replied honestly. "But I believe she'll be fine. Whether you'll be fine without her is another question." Veronica returned home in a state of turmoil. For the first time in a long time, she had to make breakfast, clear the table, and load the dishwasher. Then she called work and took the day off. She couldn't concentrate. Everything was falling out of her hands. Sitting in the empty house, she suddenly realized how much her mother had done. Every corner reminded her of her mother. The neatly folded towels in the bathroom, the vase of candies for Ash, the book on the armrest of the chair. Marjorie had been invisible while she was there, but her absence was palpable. Closer to lunchtime, Veronica couldn't take it anymore and started calling her mother again, but the phone was off. She left a voicemail message. "Mom, please call. We're worried. Whatever you've heard, we can talk about it. Please come back." Then she tried to remember where her mother might have kept her address book. Maybe there were contacts for old friends or colleagues where she could stay. Going up to her mother's room, Veronica began methodically searching through the closets and drawers, but she found nothing useful, only photographs. hers with Nate on their wedding day, the children as newborns, school photos of Haley and Ash, and an old photo of her parents, Marjorie and Warren, young, happy, smiling. Looking at this photo, Veronica suddenly felt a sharp pang of conscience. When was the last time she had asked her mother how she felt? Whether she was happy living with them? Did she feel lonely? Never. She took her mother's presence for granted as part of the environment, and now that Marjorie was gone, the house felt empty and cold. She'll come back, Veronica told herself. She has to come back. Where else would she go? But deep down, she knew her mother hadn't left without a reason, and she might not be coming back. And in the Pine Grove Motel, I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what would happen next. For the first time in many years, I felt not just alive, but real. Not a shadow, not a backdrop for someone else's life, but a person with her own desires and needs. Yes, it was scary. Yes, the future seemed foggy. But one thing I knew for sure, there was no turning back. I would not go back to a place where I was not valued or respected. I would no longer be invisible in my own daughter's life. It was time to start a new chapter. The apartment on Maple Street was small but cozy. It was a one-room apartment with a tiny kitchen and a combined bathroom. After Veronica's spacious house, it seemed like a toy, but it was mine. No one could come in without knocking. No one expected me to make breakfast or iron shirts. For the first time in 5 years, I had my own space. I could read late into the night without worrying about waking the kids. I could listen to the old records I had brought with me, the only luxury I had allowed myself to take from my past life. I could drink tea at any time of the day without having to adjust to someone else's schedule. The first week, I just came to my senses. I furnished the apartment, buying the bare necessities at a flea market. Curtains, dishes, a table lamp. I walked around the city, memorizing routes and the location of shops. I counted my money and planned my budget. My pension was barely enough to cover rent and modest meals, but that didn't scare me. I was used to living frugally. On the 8th day, I decided it was time to look for a job. Not just for the money, but also so I wouldn't be stuck inside 4 walls. At my age, it's easy to fall into despair if you don't have a goal or a daily routine. There was a notice in the city library, part-time library assistant wanted. I had always loved books, and I had a lot of experience working with children. 40 years in school had not been wasted. I decided to give it a try. The librarian, Eleanor Holloway, turned out to be an energetic woman of my age. Her gray hair was pulled back into a messy bun. She wore glasses on a chain and a bright scarf around her neck. She listened to my story about my teaching experience and immediately offered me the job. "We just need someone for the children's department," she said. 3 times a week, 4 hours a day. The pay isn't great, but it'll do for a start." "When can you start?" "Tomorrow," I replied, unable to hide my joy. That's how my new life in Cedar Hill began. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I worked at the library, helping children choose books and occasionally reading aloud to the little ones. The rest of the time, I walked, read, and sometimes went to a small cafe on the corner where they already knew the new misses with the book. Gradually, I got to know people. Eleanor, or Ellie as she asked to be called, turned out to be a sociable and kind woman. Divorced 30 years ago, she had built a life on her own terms and was happy. "It's never too late to start over," she said when I shared my doubts. "I left my husband at 40 when everyone around me was pointing fingers. Now I have my own apartment, a job I love, and no one telling me how to live my life." I didn't tell her the whole story of how I left my daughter. I just said that I was widowed, had been living with my daughter's family, but had decided it was time to gain independence. Ellie didn't ask any unnecessary questions, another trait I appreciated about her. After a week of working at the library, I met Morton Shepherd, the owner of the bookstore across the street. He often stopped by to chat with Ellie about new arrivals or just to have a cup of tea. Tall, thin, with a neat gray beard and intelligent eyes, he reminded me of Warren in his later years, whom I would never see again. "You're new here," he remarked when Ellie introduced us. "How do you like our town?" "Quiet," I replied. "Just what I need." He nodded understandingly. "That's what most people come here for. I moved here from Charlotte after my wife died. Too many memories." We got talking. It turned out that Mort, as everyone called him, was also a former teacher. He had taught literature in high school. After retiring, he bought a small bookshop and now enjoyed a quiet life surrounded by books. "Come visit," he invited before leaving. "I have a section with used books where you can find real treasures." Meanwhile, Veronica's house was in chaos. Without my invisible hand keeping things in order, everything went haywire. Veronica, who was used to coming home to a clean house with dinner ready, now had to cook, clean, and do laundry herself, all after a full day at the hospital. Nate, of course, didn't help. Nothing had changed for him. He still expected his shirts to be ironed and dinner to be served on time. Only now, these responsibilities fell on his wife's shoulders. The children were also confused. Haley, who used to be able to count on her grandmother's help with homework and hairstyling, was now often late for school with her braids messy. Ash, who was used to his grandmother's bedtime stories and warm milk with cookies, became moody and had trouble sleeping. 2 weeks after I left, Veronica was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She called me several times, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to talk to her. The hurt was still too fresh. In desperation, she turned to Trudy. Her neighbor greeted her coldly. She had always been on my side. "You look terrible," Trudy remarked, letting Veronica into the house. "Thanks for the compliment," she said with a bitter smile. "I haven't slept properly in 2 weeks. Work, kids, the house, it's all on me." "What about your husband, Nate?" Veronica waved her hand. "He thinks housework is a woman's job. He doesn't even offer to help." Trudy shook her head. "And you've only just noticed? Your mother did all the housework for years while you were building your career." "I know," Veronica said quietly. "I know that now. Trudy, you have no idea how much I miss her. Not just as a housekeeper, just as a mother." "Well, you drove her away yourself." "I didn't drive her away," Veronica exclaimed. "She left on her own." "After she heard you wanted to send her to a nursing home." Veronica lowered her head. "It was Nate's idea. I would never—" "But you didn't object," Trudy interrupted. "That's what hurt your mother the most." They were silent for a moment. Then Veronica asked, "Do you know where she is? I've called everyone I can think of. No one has seen her." Trudy hesitated. "I called her a week after I left just to let her know I was okay. I made her promise not to tell Veronica where I was. But now, looking at her daughter's tormented face, Trudy softened. "She's fine," she said. "That's all I can say." "Have you talked to her?" Veronica leaned forward. "Trudy, please tell me where she is." "I can't, I promised. But she's alive. She's healthy, and she doesn't want to come back. At least for now." "She said that?" "Yes. She said she needs time and space to figure out who she is without you." Veronica covered her face with her hands. "I had no idea she was so unhappy with us." "She wasn't unhappy," Trudy said gently. "She loves you and the children. She's just tired of being invisible." Meanwhile, I was getting more and more used to my new life. Every day brought little joys: a smile from a child I helped find a book, a cup of coffee in a quiet cafe, a conversation with Ellie or Mort. I began to notice things that had previously escaped my attention: how the light changed throughout the day, the different shades of green on the trees in the park, the smell of the air after rain. Sometimes, of course, I felt a pang of longing for my grandchildren, especially for Ash, with his endless questions and trusting hugs. At times like that, I would take out my phone and look at the photos I had thoughtfully saved before leaving, but I had no intention of going back, not now, when I was just beginning to feel alive again. One evening, on my way home from the library, I ran into Mort. He was standing in the window of his shop, putting up a notice about new books. "Marjorie," he exclaimed happily, "I've been looking for you. I have a book that might interest you." We went into the shop. Mort took an old edition of Jane Eyre from under the counter, my favorite novel, which I had mentioned in conversation. "First American edition," he said proudly. "Not exactly rare, but a nice copy." I carefully took the book. Leather binding, yellowed pages, a faint smell of old paper and printing ink. "It's beautiful," I said, "but I'm afraid it's beyond my means." "Oh, it's not for sale," Mort smiled. "It's a gift, in honor of your first month in Cedar Hill." I was taken aback. "But I can't accept such an expensive gift." "You can," he insisted. "Consider it professional solidarity. one former teacher to another. There was so much genuine kindness in his eyes that I couldn't refuse. I accepted the book and thanked him. And then, to my surprise, I invited him in for tea. "I have some apple pie," I said. "I baked it this morning." That's how my new life in Cedar Hill began, with a job that brought me joy, with new friends who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I did for them, with a small apartment that was becoming more and more like home with each passing day. And in the evenings, when I sat by the window with a book, I sometimes found myself wondering, I wonder how Veronica and the children are doing. Were they managing without me? Did they miss me? The answer came unexpectedly. A month after I left, Ellie handed me an envelope. "This was brought by a woman who was looking for you. She said she was your daughter." I froze. "Veronica was here? Did you tell her where I live?" "No, of course not." Ellie shook her head. "I pretended I didn't know anyone named Marjorie Ellington. But she left a letter and asked me to give it to you if you showed up." I took the envelope. It was Veronica's handwriting, sweeping and careless as always. My heart ached with a mixture of love and resentment. "You don't have to read it," Ellie said, seeing my confusion. "I know," I nodded, "but I think it's time." That evening, sitting in my apartment, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and several children's drawings. Ash had drawn our family, Mom, Dad, Haley, himself, and me standing a little apart, but with a big red heart on my chest. Haley had drawn the house and written in large letters, "Grandma, come back." In the letter, Veronica wrote that she had only now realized how much I had done for them, that she hadn't appreciated me, that she had taken me for granted, that their house was empty without me and that the children missed me, that she would never have sent me to a nursing home despite Nate's suggestion, that she wanted to make everything right. "I'm not asking you to come back, Mom," she wrote at the end. "I just want to know that you're okay, and I want you to know that our door is always open to you, not as a free babysitter or housekeeper, but as the most precious person in our lives." I put the letter down, feeling tears welling up in my throat. Maybe all was not lost. Maybe my disappearance had really made Veronica realize that I wasn't just a function in their house, but a person with feelings and needs. But I wasn't ready to go back. Not now, when I was just beginning to find myself. For the first time in many years, I felt needed and valued for who I was, not just as someone's mother or grandmother, and I didn't want to lose that feeling. 2 months flew by. My life in Cedar Hill had settled into a rhythm. In the mornings, I worked at the library, and after lunch, I would walk in the park or visit Mort's bookstore. I spent my evenings reading or talking to Ellie, who had become a true friend. Sometimes Mort and I went to the local theater or to concerts at the community center. Nothing romantic, just pleasant company between two lonely people who had things to talk about. After Veronica's letter, I finally called her. It was a short, awkward conversation. I told her I was alive and well, working, and that everything was fine. She asked to meet, but I refused. I wasn't ready. I promised to think about it and call her back when I was ready to see her. She didn't pressure me, and I was grateful for that. Since then, we've been calling each other once a week. I talked to my grandchildren. Ash raved about new dinosaurs. Haley shared her gymnastics successes. They missed me. It was obvious, and I missed them too. But I had no intention of going back. I remembered too well how I felt in their house. Invisible. A ghost. Free labor. One Saturday morning, as I was sorting through new arrivals in the children's section of the library, Ellie came up to me looking concerned. "Marge," she said quietly, "your daughter is here. She's waiting at the entrance." I froze, the book slipping from my hands. "Veronica? Here?" "Yes," Ellie nodded. "She said she won't leave until she talks to you. She looks determined." My heart pounded. I wasn't ready for this. Not here, not now. But then again, how long could I put off the inevitable? "Okay," I said, wiping my hands on my apron. "Tell her I'll be ready in 15 minutes. Have her wait at the cafe across the street." Ellie left, and I tried to collect my thoughts. What would I say to my daughter? How would I explain my actions? And most importantly, what did I want from this meeting? 15 minutes later, I took off my apron, combed my hair, and left the library. Across the street was a small cafe called Martha's, where I sometimes drank coffee. Veronica was sitting by the window, nervously tapping her fingers on the table. She had lost a lot of weight in the last 2 months, and there were dark circles under her eyes. My heart sank. Despite everything, she was my girl. The bell rang as I entered the cafe. Veronica looked up, her face reflecting a whole range of emotions: relief, joy, anxiety. "Mom!" She stood up, tentatively holding out her arms. I didn't rush into her embrace as she might have expected. I just sat down across from her and ordered tea when the waitress came over. "How did you find me?" I asked when we were alone. "Trudy," Veronica confessed. She didn't say anything for a long time, but then... "I came every weekend," begged her. Finally, she took pity on me. I nodded. I couldn't blame Trudy. Veronica knew how to be persuasive when she wanted to be. "Why?" I asked bluntly. "Why did you look for me?" Veronica looked surprised. "What kind of question is that, Mom? You disappeared." I was worried. 2 months, Veronica. 2 months went by. I called you, told you I was fine. Why did you have to look for me?" She lowered her eyes. "I wanted to apologize. In person. And I miss you, Mom. We all do." The waitress brought our tea. I took a sip, gathering my thoughts. "You said we all," I finally said. "Does Nate miss you too? The same Nate who wanted to send me to a nursing home so we could be a normal family again?" Veronica flinched. "You really heard everything." "Every word," I nodded. "And your conversation with your friends too, about how I'm intruding on your personal life." "Mom, I was wrong." Her voice faltered. I didn't understand how it sounded to you. Just what?" I asked when she fell silent. "I just got used to you always being there. To you solving all the problems, taking care of the children, running the household. I took it for granted. And only when you left..." She didn't finish her sentence, but I understood. Only when I left did she realize how much I had done for their family, how much invisible work had fallen on my shoulders. "Nate suggested hiring a housekeeper," Veronica continued after a pause. "He said it would be easier. But that's not the point, is it? It's not about who's going to cook dinner or iron the shirts. It's about you. It's about us losing you." I looked at my daughter and saw that she was sincere. For the first time in a long time, she saw me as a person, not a function. And it was strange. Nice, but strange. "How are the kids?" I asked, changing the subject. Veronica's face lit up. "They're fine. Ash got an A on his dinosaur project, and Haley came in second in her gymnastics competition. They miss you so much. They keep asking when you're coming back." "I'm not coming back, Veronica," I said firmly. "Not for good." She flinched. "But why? We can fix everything. I talked to Nate and he realized he was wrong. We can give you a bigger room or even build a separate wing." "It's not about the size of the room," I interrupted. "It's about respect. It's about how you treated me. Like a free servant, not like a member of the family with my own needs and feelings." "That's not true," Veronica exclaimed. "I've always loved you." "Love and respect are different things," I said gently. "You can love someone and still not respect their boundaries, their dignity." We fell silent. Veronica looked out the window while I finished my tea. Finally, she asked, "Do you have a new life here?" I nodded. "Yes. A job at the library. My own apartment, friends." "Friends?" she asked, surprised. "You settled in so quickly? Amazing, isn't it?" I smiled. "It turns out that at 67 you can start all over again, meet new people, find something you enjoy doing." "You look happy," Veronica remarked with a touch of sadness. "I'm happy," I replied honestly. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm living my own life, not someone else's." We fell silent again. Then Veronica raised her head resolutely. "I understand that you're not coming back for good, but maybe you could visit us sometimes, on weekends? The children miss you so much, and so do I." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, to draw a firm line, but another part of me longed for my grandchildren, for the feeling of being needed that they gave me. "I'll think about it," I said finally, "but on one condition. If I come, it will be as a guest, not as a housekeeper or babysitter. No cooking for the whole family, no cleaning, no looking after the children while you and Nate are out having fun. Of course, Veronica agreed quickly. Whatever you say. And one more thing, I added. I want you and the children to come and visit me, so you can see how I live here, so you understand that I have my own life, my own space. Veronica nodded. Okay, when can we come? Next Saturday, I decided. I'll show you the city, my apartment, introduce you to my friends. Your friends? She asked, slightly surprised. Yes, I said firmly. My friends, Ellie, the librarian, Mort, the bookstore owner, they're important people in my life, and I want you to meet them. Something flashed in Veronica's eyes, the realization that I really did have a life of my own, separate from theirs, that I was no longer just mom or grandma, but a person with my own circle of friends and interests. Okay, she said, Saturday. We agreed on the details, and Veronica left. She had to pick up her kids from school. I stayed sitting in the cafe thinking about our conversation. Something had changed, not just in me, but in Veronica too. She had seen me for the first time, not as an extension of herself, not as a function, but as a separate person with her own needs and rights. It was the first step toward rebuilding our relationship. Difficult, awkward, but necessary. On Saturday, they arrived at noon sharp. Veronica, Haley, and Ash. Nate stayed home, saying he had to work, but I suspected he was just uncomfortable seeing me after our conversation about the nursing home. Ash threw himself into my arms as soon as I opened the door. "Grandma!" he exclaimed, hugging me. "I missed you so much!" Haley was more reserved, but she hugged me too, whispering in my ear, "I'm glad to see you, Grandma." Veronica stood aside, giving the children a chance to reconnect with me. There were tears in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. We had a wonderful day. I showed them my little apartment, which I had managed to furnish and make cozy. Then I took them to the library, where I introduced them to Ellie. She immediately hit it off with Ash, showing him the section with books about dinosaurs. Haley was interested in books on gymnastics. "You have a nice job," Veronica remarked as we left the library, "and a nice colleague." "Ellie's not just a colleague," I corrected her. "She's my friend. We often go to the theater together or just chat over a cup of tea." Veronica nodded, accepting this information. We went into Mort's bookstore. He was just finishing with a customer and lit up when he saw us. "Marjorie!" he exclaimed, "and this must be your family." I introduced Veronica and the children to him. Mort shook Veronica's hand, ruffled Ash's hair, and bowed gallantly to Haley, eliciting a shy smile from her. "Your grandmother is a real treasure," he told the children. "She knows more about books than I do, even though I've owned this store for 20 years. Ash stood up straight proudly. "Grandma is the smartest. She helped me with my dinosaur project." Mort winked at me. "I'm sure you did. Now how about picking out a book as a gift? One for Ash and one for Haley. The store is treating." The children rushed to explore the shelves with excitement. Veronica watched Mort with mild surprise. "He's very kind," she remarked. "Yes," I agreed, "and smart, and he's never boring." Something flashed in my daughter's eyes. Understanding, surprise, but she said nothing. After the bookstore, we went to the cafe where I usually had lunch. The owner, Martha, already knew me as a regular customer and greeted me with a smile. "Marge!" she exclaimed, "and you have guests. Your usual table by the window is free." We sat down, and Marge brought us the menu. "I recommend the apple pie," she said to the children. "It's the best in town, although they say your grandmother bakes an even better one." Ash beamed. "Grandma's pie is the best." "Apple pie for dessert, then," Martha smiled and left. We spent almost an hour in the cafe. The children talked about school, and Veronica talked about her work. I noticed that she had become more attentive to the children, listening more than she spoke. Perhaps my departure had made her reevaluate her priorities after all. When it was time to say goodbye, Ash hugged me tightly again. "Grandma, will you come visit us next week? Please." I looked at Veronica. She nodded, confirming the invitation. "Okay," I said. "I'll come visit you next Saturday. But just for the day, not overnight." "Why not?" Ash frowned. "Your room is waiting for you." "Because I have my own home now, sweetie," I explained. "Here in Cedar Hill, but I'll come visit you, I promise." He nodded reluctantly, not quite understanding, but accepting the situation. Haley was more perceptive. "Do you like it here, Grandma?" she asked as we walked to the bus stop. "Yes," I answered honestly. "I like it very much." "Then I'm happy for you," she said simply, "but I'll still miss you." We hugged goodbye, the four of us forming a tight circle. Something was healed in that moment, not completely, but the crack began to close. "See you next Saturday," Veronica said, helping the children onto the bus. "See you Saturday," I nodded. Standing at the bus stop and watching the bus drive away, I felt a strange mixture of emotions: sadness at parting with my grandchildren, relief that they were gone and I was left in my new home, hope that our relationship could become healthy, based on mutual respect. It was a new beginning, not just for me, but for our entire family. I was no longer invisible. I was Marjorie Ellington, librarian, friend, mother, grandmother, a person with a life, desires, and dreams, and it was wonderful.